Hi everyone, I'm Heidi Totten and this is Inspire the Sprouts Homeschool Interviews. Today I am so excited to be interviewing Jennifer Dayley. I met Jennifer actually online in one of our homeschool groups, and when I was talking about how I wanted to look for homeschool families to interview, she jumped up and said, "Hey, that sounds like fun." So I'm really excited to have you get to know Jennifer a little bit today. She has 4 children. Her oldest is married and she's about to become a grandmother. And then she has 3 children at home, and her youngest is 10, and she has been homeschooling for a couple of years, but her history with homeschooling goes back a couple of decades, it sounds like. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to Jennifer Dayley. Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great. I am great. Last night we tried to do this, and there were so many storms, so we're hoping that things stick today. So Jennifer, let's just jump in. Tell us your story, because I caught a little bit of your story last night, but tell us your story about how you first started homeschooling. And you live in Idaho, right? So there isn't, or at the time you didn't really think that there was a lot of other homeschoolers.
No, I didn't. We used to travel a lot with my husband's business. They installed fiber optics, and so we would live in RV trailers, fifth wheels, quite a bit and travel around the country. And we were in an area down in Texas that was a long ways away from the school. And I didn't want a driver. It was like 45 minutes or an hour, and I wasn't comfortable with the bus. I didn't know the area, and we weren't going to be there that long, so I just decided to homeschool, and nothing major. We just kind of kept her up on what they were doing and stuff, and I kind of liked it. It was fun, and anyways, we passed that. They went back to school, did the same thing they'd been doing, and more kids came along, but I never kind of forgot about that. It just stuck in the back of my head, and then about I don't know, 4 years or so ago, the thought kind of surfaced, and I let it brew in my mind a little bit, but nothing serious. Just wonder what that's like. Wonder what But I didn't really have any big reason to do it at the time, I thought, and it just wasn't the right time. And then about 2.5 years ago, the thoughts started coming a lot, and I started throwing it out there verbally to my family, and the more and more and more we talked about it, the more we realized there's something to this. And we lived in an area where the schools were not great. I was not impressed at all between the schools and the things that were going on the bus. And I frankly hated sending my kids away all day long. It just didn't feel right to me. I'm like, we're a family and somebody else is literally raising my children 3/4 of the year, and that didn't feel good to me. And they would come home after 7 or 8 hours at school and have 5, 6 hours of homework at night, and that was our life, and it didn't mesh. So after talking to my kids, they started getting serious about things. My daughter, she was 14 at the time, and she came home at semester, January 2013, and then my son, who's 10, ended up staying. We were going to finish him out the rest of the year because he wanted to stay and then come home. But about 6 weeks before school got out, he had been crying every day for a few weeks, and got to the point where we just woke up one day and said, "This is it. Today's your last day," and we knew. And he walked out of there like he was in a marching band. It was like relief. And then my oldest daughter was. She finished out the year and then came home and stayed. So.
And what has surprised you the most about homeschooling? Because you did it several years ago, when your daughter was young, but I'll switch back to me. But as you've made all these transitions in your family, and effectively most of your kids were pretty grown when you started, or not pretty grown, but relatively, they had been in school for most of their life so far. What was the biggest surprise that you encountered when you brought them home?
The biggest surprise I think at first was the fear. I didn't realize I would be that scared because I thought that we were very liberated, and it felt peaceful and right, but I was scared to death because, like, you hear from about every homeschool mom, I don't want to fail my kids. They, you know, especially my son, he's got to provide for his family. And what if, you know, there are lots of what ifs. And I was really overwhelmed with all the choices. But I was very surprised at how quickly they learned. And when I thought that, you know, my kids were kind of ahead on things anyway when they pulled out, ahead by public school standards. But my son, especially with math, I wanted to keep him up as close as I could to what his friends were at. And we de-schooled a lot. We really didn't do anything for the first several months other than just, you know, little things here and there. And so that kind of worried me, even though I knew we needed it. And as I got to the summer, this past summer, I told my son, we've got to go through the summer and keep working on your math so that you can stay caught up. And I was really afraid he was behind because we hadn't done much. And so I said, we need to at least work on your math facts. And as I started going through them with him, I realized he knew them. He was not quite to the point where he was spouting them off this fast, but he knew his math facts up through even division. And that surprised me because we'd hardly done anything with it. So I realized that, okay, they don't have to be sitting in a desk in a, you know, concrete walled room for 7 hours a day to learn.
And so you said you felt fear, and fear is a common thing that a lot of homeschool families feel when they're first starting off. There's kind of an apprehension, and there's mom trying to manage everything and trying to, you know, keep the excitement levels up. What were the first steps that you took in order to overcome that fear?
I prayed a lot. I think that was my number one thing. And then I made sure that I talked to a lot of other homeschool moms. I didn't, like I was saying yesterday, I didn't think that there were very many in this area, but I've realized since that there are. I was able to get connected with a lot of moms and talked to them, and I realized that they either are or were in the same boat as I am or was, and their kids are turning out great, and they're still learning things. Excuse me. And then I read books and just started reading blogs and just doing all the learning that I could from different aspects. I think once I started looking into everything, and especially talking to other moms, I realized that every single family does it differently. And you know, in schools, I mean, from class to class, you might get different things, but overall, it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing everywhere you go. And with homeschool, it's not. It's all different. It's completely individualized. And that can be a little bit scary, but it's also really cool. And I think just it works better in general. It works better because you're able to work for each person.
So you mentioned, you know, everybody's different, and definitely what I found with homeschooling is that the culture of your family integrates into the homeschool. So if you have a wild and crazy family, you'll probably have a wild and crazy homeschool. It's not like, oh, okay, we're wild and crazy in life and we go and, you know, do all of these things that are fun and exciting, and then when we get to schooling, we buckle down and we're very calm and peaceful and quiet. So tell us what a typical day looks like in your house, and how, and I know you run a business, so I want to talk about that as well, how you balance the business and homeschool. But let's start with what a typical day looks like when you are homeschooling. Oh, it looks like we lost her. Oh, these storms are just crazy. So I'll just tell you what a typical day looks like for us while I'm waiting for her to jump back on. When we get up in the morning, we kind of adopted a policy like Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog from his book, where the things that we don't want to do, we do first. So math is not my strong suit, and my kids are good at math, but they don't love it. It's not their favorite thing. So we start off with math, and we do about one lesson, basically, and I sit down with them, and I'm just there. I'm just a resource. They have as they've gone through their math workbooks and their program, they've been able to teach themselves the concepts that they need to learn, and then I'm just there to kind of redirect and guide them. But the confidence that they get from actually doing it themselves is what I'm going for, is look, you did that yourself, that's so cool. And then we usually take a break and they do their you know, chores and things like that, and then we will go into, later in the afternoon, we will do our other subjects. We'll do our writing course, which right now we're starting on Brave Writer this year. We've tried a couple other language arts classes that are courses that I didn't really love, so we're trying this one. We do science or history. We do our reading together, and then often when I'm reading, they have doodle books, and so they'll do artistic stuff. So they also, starting in September, we are in homeschool support groups. So they go to one that's actually at a Kung Fu studio where they do art and music and history and math, and it's all kind of integrated, and then they do Kung Fu as well. And then we have a Commonwealth group through Leadership Education Mentoring Institute that meets once a week as well, and that's more history focused. So that's what our typical day looks like. Often my kids are kind of on their own for learning, and once we get these are the things that we need to learn to stay on track, once we get those things done, then they're pretty free to learn or to play. If their other friends are off track from school or something like that, then they have a lot of opportunity for flexibility. So it works for us. We're not a wild and crazy family, as I was just mentioning. We're actually a fairly calm family, but I do run a business. I do work part-time from home and part-time in an office, and so fortunately I have a lot of help. My husband has a flexible job, and we live with my mom. We all bought a house together, so we can flex our schedule to help each other, so that works really well. So it looks like we're still dealing with some of the storms that are coming up. There were actually four books that Jennifer recommended, and when she talked about getting started. One is free range learning, and I'm going to put this in the blog post that I'm doing, so I'll put links to these books so that you have them easily at your disposal. Free range learning, The Well-Trained Mind, which is by Susan Wise Bauer, and our history program that we do is with Susan Wise Bauer. A Thomas Jefferson Education, written by Oliver DeMille, and that is a TJ Ed is a very common method that is researched when people first get started with homeschooling, and most of the people I know use TJ Ed and incorporate it in their homeschooling, kind of a hybrid plan. And then she mentioned Honey for a Child's Heart, and this is something that I have not read or heard of, and so I was just going to look it up and see what it's all about. But those were the books that she mentioned, and she is a Simply Healed, a licensed Simply Healed practitioner, which Simply Healed, somebody who works with the Simply Healed method works with releasing emotional energy in the body and helps people to let go of negative emotions and things like that. So what I'm going to do, we did some of our interview last night, and so I think what I'll try and do is I'm going to check and see if I can get her back on really quickly. If you want to hang on just a second, then I will see if I can do that, and we'll be right back. Okay, there you are. All right. Yay! Yay for technology.
Okay, let's try this again. Hang on.
I've just been telling them about the 4 books that you recommend, and I've been giving them a breakdown of what my typical day looks like. So now we can switch over to you and talk about what your typical day looks like in your homeschool.
Okay, it's still cutting out, so I can't guarantee I'll be here in 2 minutes. So for us, right now we're getting up. I'm getting up with my daughters between 6 and 6:30, and we're going on a walk around our neighborhood. And then we come home, and the days that we don't go walking, everybody just kind of wakes up when they wake up. It's anywhere between 6 and 9 a.m. I really try not to stress. I mean, it's summer right now too, so I'm not too worried about it. But we do go to a Commonwealth group for TJ Ed, and that'll start back up in about a month. And so when that happens, that's every Tuesday. That will pretty much be our day, because we'll be gone for about 3.5 hours doing that, and then we'll go to the library afterwards and work on whatever. I mean, they don't require, that they do any of the assignments. They, require, inspire, not require kind of thing. And so they let them be in charge and decide what they're going to do. But if there's any assignments and things that they need to do, they will just work on those that day, pretty much. That's our co-op day. And then Mondays is usually a little mix of some homeschool and then a lot of getting errands run and things that we need done around the house, family stuff, things like that. And then Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are hit it hard on the other things that we need to do as far as, math and science and history and English and those kinds of things. And so, Mondays and Tuesdays are kind of a mix of both, and then Wednesday is get it all done. So, and we try to get most of it done. I don't have a set time, but we try to just get most of it done in the morning. Usually mid to late morning is when we get started, and then we just go till whenever. Usually it's not more than 2 or 3 hours at the most.
So you're not sitting there every day doing math, every day doing language arts, every day doing history, every day doing science. You're integrating learning into patterns that your family already has. And I belong to a Commonwealth group as well, and so and ours meets on Thursdays starting in about a month, and that's what I kind of look at for history, because my kids now have studied over the last 2 years. They've studied the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, and we're about to launch into the Civil War. And so from a historical standpoint, they're getting a lot of history that I certainly didn't get when I was 8 and 10 years old. So I let those experiences kind of take over, and then we scale back on history for an actual curriculum. Is that something that you do, or how do you do those subjects that are not linear? I mean, with math, you kind of learn in order, but how do you work it when your Commonwealth is learning one thing, but the appropriate age learning for your son or your daughter might be a totally different topic?
Where we did Commonwealth last year too, but we were still kind of in the didn't really go much further than what Commonwealth was doing for my one daughter. My other daughter didn't do Commonwealth, but my younger daughter did. They were doing Civil War and sort of freedom class. And some stuff, and what's really surprising about it, I just pretty much let.
Oh, looks like we dropped her again. So I want to talk a little bit about the Commonwealth and how that works. With Thomas Jefferson Education, the Commonwealth was created. There's 2 different groups. There's scholars and there's juniors. And the junior group, which is what my kids are in, my daughter goes to a class called Liberty Girls. And for the last few years, they've studied or read the American Girl doll books, and then they've done activities that correspond with what the girls would have done in the American Girl doll books. So, for example, this last semester we read Caroline, and with Caroline, it's during the War of 1812, and so we built little wooden boats to sail in a creek. We did needlepoint and stitchery. We went ice skating for a field trip because she loves to ice skate, and so it was all integrated with what Caroline would have been doing, and it's a lot of fun. This year they're going to do more biographies of women during the time period of the Civil War, because that's what we're going into. So anyway, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, and we'll try for another day and do the second half of this interview. And we're sorry about the storms and all of the craziness. We need a sunny day in Idaho for this to really work. So I will let you know when the second half comes up. And in the meantime, have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.